Payment's all good.
That's it. Before we wrap up, Kieran, obviously this year was the Olympics in Rio. Wrestling's in your blood, and how did you get a chance to see much of 2016's wrestling, the Olympics? And if so, what were some of the highlights for you, sir?
Always, I kept up to date with the freestyle, the men's freestyle. I never really seen much of the women's wrestling or the Greco wrestling, but I watched all the men's freestyle. I was actually hoping to make some money on the Olympics. I always do quite well at any big wrestling tournament, Sky Bet put those up, but this one just seemed to provide a few shocks. I didn't do as well as I thought. Like the big upset from the tournament really was Jordan Burroughs losing at 74 kilos and going out of the tournament so early. So that bust a few of my accumulators. He was my dead cert, so he sunk a few bets. But like the standard of the wrestling was really good. Some kind of good guy, 86 kilos, sad alive. He probably cemented his status as pound for pound wrestler in the world. I think he won the tournament at that weight class without really losing a point. Smashed everyone. Try to think if there was any other kind of standout performances. America, I've got a good guy at 97 kilos, Kyle Snyder. He won the weight class at, I think he's only 19.
Wow.
Which, wrestling wise, that's pretty young. Normally wrestlers don't hit their peak from maybe 25 to 29, so for him to win the Olympics is some achievement. And I think actually recently Snyder was talking about fighting MMA, so
wow,
you might actually see him fighting in the cage soon. I can imagine him being a bit of a monster if he went to the right team and transferred over to MMA.
He's one for watching for the future. Good tips, sir. And if I understand right, Russia did well despite all their troubles prior to the Olympics. They were able to go top of the medal hall. Was that right?
Do you know it's an utter piss take? So they're banning all these other Russians from all the other sports, and somehow they let all the Russian wrestlers wrestle. All these boys were just out of their minds. You want to see the build in some of these athletes? I cannot believe none of these guys are failing drug tests. Like I've been and trained in Eastern Europe before, and I know for a fact what's going on. I've seen it happening, and the fact they can still get away with that, and then the Olympics bottled the decision and letting them compete was a bit of a joke, if I'm being honest.
The haters never pulling any punches, especially in the Martial Arts Chat podcast. Fantastic stuff, sir. Kieran, it's always a pleasure to get your time on the show. We look forward to seeing you at the Hydro on the 1st of October. Before I let you go, have you got any message for your fans come that big show?
Just make sure you get tickets. Like, this is probably, outside the UFC, this is the best show that's came to Scotland, and I don't think unless they come back you won't see a show like this in a good time. 100%. So it's important everyone gets out there, supports the show, make sure you buy your tickets, get behind the Scottish fighters. Who cares about team rivalries and all that? The better the Scottish fighters do, the more people we have at the show, the more likely ACB are to come back. And although the UFC was a bigger card, I actually think this might be a better matchmake card, so you're going to see a lot better fights. So definitely make sure you get out there, make the show, and you're going to get to see me and have a great fight and put on a good show.
Hear, hear. Kieran, the Hater Malone, best of luck against John Maguire on the 1st of October.
Perfect, mate. Thank you.
Best of luck to Kieran Malone come fight night. Bryan Lacey is a good friend of the show and a fantastic commentator on the MMA scene here in the UK with his show, The One Punch Podcast with Brad Pickett. ACB has been his newfound home at the commentary table, and who better to get us all excited for Saturday than the Wimpy Warrior hero himself. So we caught up with Bryan and got his thoughts on ACB ahead of the Hydro. I'm pleased to say we're joined by none other than the voice of ACB, Mr. Bryan Lacey. Bryan, how are you, my friend?
I am very well, mate, and I'd like to formally extend my congratulations on you becoming an honest gentleman at last.
No fault time. Thank you very much, my friend.
Wonderful. Well done, mate. Really pleased, boys. So congratulations on the wedding. There we go.
Thank you, sir. And what a card we have next week in my backyard as well. Christmas come early for us Glaswegians. Let's have a look at some of those fights, sir, starting with the Scottish boys. ACB announced Kieran the Hater Malone will take on former UFC and, of course, the very experienced John the One Maguire. Bryan, what can fans expect from this contest, sir?
This is an exciting one. I mean, Kieran Malone just bleeds Scottish. He is an absolute the promo he's put in for this. I had a little snapshot of exactly how passionate, how excited he is to be on this card, going up against John the One Maguire, one of the biggest names in welterweight, UK welterweight mixed martial arts. When you look at the records, you would think this is going to be such a one-sided affair. John Maguire is just a nightmare. His ground game, his gypsy jiu-jitsu, as he calls it, is phenomenal. And when you look at Kieran Malone's record, you might not think when you just look on paper, this is going to be much of a scrap. But when you know the people, when you know what Kieran is putting into this, if you followed him on social media, what he's doing in the gym and who he's training with out there at higher level is just unbelievable. So for this is going to be one hell of a scrap. They also look quite similar, so I'm going to have to make sure I really focus in and call this one properly. But Kieran Malone with the Scottish fans behind him, looking to really upset the welterweight division, and it'll be a hell of a scalp if he can take down John Maguire.
Absolutely, and staying with those Scottish fighters, we have, of course, our very own Chris, the Bad Guy Bungard, taking on undefeated prospect Gavin Hughes. Should make for an interesting fight. Both are very athletic fighters. What's your thoughts on how this one might go down, Brian?
This is hugely exciting. Chris Bungard, just an exciting fight coming from Scottish Hit Squad. The background he's got, just the way he approaches a fight is, he's full on war mode. He's fully focused and coming out to the Hydro. I've spoken to him a couple of times. I took him to make one of his little boyhood dreams come true yesterday. And I took him to Celtic Football Club where he got to have a little kick around with the players, as well as show them some of his moves. And he was talking to me about this fight, and there's a passion and a fire behind that man's eyes, which he knows just how big a stage this is and just what sort of a challenge he's got in front of him. Gavin Hughes is an unbelievable prospect. He's undefeated, 5-0, finished all of his fights. Only one of them has gone past the second round. He loves a submission, but he can knock people out as well. Yeah. This is the exciting thing. He's fought on Ice FC all of his career. Gavin has got he's used to fighting in his hometown. He's used to fighting with a friendly crowd. He's going into the backyard of Bungard, the bad guy himself, and Bungard's already said he's going to show him and take him to places he's never been. This will be a real test of exactly where these two are in their careers, and just because Gavin Hughes is undefeated, Bungard was one of the first people to step up and say, I will take that fight. So cannot wait to see what these two put on for us.
Absolutely. And of course we have Kevin Loban as well on that card. But let's talk about the Scottish headliner that is Mr. Braveheart himself, Robert Whiteford. Brian, last time he was at the Hydro, I watched him finish in person Paul Redmond at UFC, and he was full of emotion, jumping into the crowd. This time, though, obviously he's under the ACB banner. Sorry, I should say this time when he takes on Kevin Petchey. We're hoping for the same fire, the same passion. But what can you tell us more about this contest, sir?
This is like a really brave fight for Whiteford to take on, and I say that, and it sounds stupid saying it's brave because he's a cage fighter. He's stepping into a cage to fight a human being. That is brave enough. But he is going to be the first Scotsman to headline a fight for a major promotion. He was the first one to step in there for the UFC. He was the first one to to walk out and then knock out an opponent at the UFC at the Hydro last time. And this time he's taking on Kevin Petchey, which you might not have heard of him on the UK scene, but European-wise, he's an absolute monster. He's highly decorated. He's been there. He's done that. He's got trying to remember. He's a French grappling champion, European grappling champion, a Sanshao champion. So he's grappling wise, it's going to be interesting to see how him and the flying judoka match up. Yeah. But striking wise as well, he's got long limbs, he hits hard, and it can be very, very difficult for opponents to close him down. So for Whiteford to say, yes, this is the fight that I want, they've given us a true headline fight, and it's going to be a hell of a scrap to see Whiteford walk out there and to see if he can take it home in his hometown. Awesome
stuff. And a fight that I feel is probably going under the radar a bit is the ever exciting Ed Arthur taking on Brent Crawley. You look at Arthur's record of 7-2, and those two losses, one fight of the year against Shea Walsh and the other obviously fight of night and his last contest against Peter Yan in ACB. The guy's a former BAMA champion, and he takes on Brent Crawley, who's on a 2-fight winning streak, both victories coming via knockout. How excited, Brian, should Glasgow be for this fight, sir?
Any fight where you've got Ed Arthur getting in the cage, anyone should be excited. Just watch the weigh-ins, man. This bloke is built for war, but he is going up against Brent Crawley, and this is a hell of a matchup. And you say it's flying under the radar. The problem with it flying under the radar is they all are, as far as there's so many good fights on this card that to shine the light that all of these individual bouts, like a lot of these could headline just regional promotions on their own. If you think about some of the bouts we've put together, Bostwick versus Mitchell, Ed Arthur versus Brent Crawley, these fights would top any other card in the UK. And for this one, they came in and they only announced it a couple of weeks ago, and it's just exciting to have both these prospects on the card. I think they're fighting at £140, which will be interesting because they got signed up with only, I think, 5 or 6 weeks left. Right. They are fighting at £140, which takes the pressure off of the weight cut. And when you've seen how the pressure and the pace that Ed Arthur can set, and also when you know anything about Brent Crawley, you know that this is truly going to be an absolute battle. It might be a 3-round war, or we could be done within 30 seconds, mate. And that is the beauty of this contest.
Definitely. And of course, Stormin Norman Parke, he's set to display all his judoka skills against Andrew Fisher, a man he knows very well. What can fans expect from this fight, sir?
This is exciting. This should have happened, I think, a crazy amount of time ago in their careers. Maybe, this is off the top of my head, maybe 7 years ago, this fight was supposed to have been signed. Right. So it's they've known of each other for a long time. They've known it that one day they would cross paths, and they are doing it at ACB 47 on October the 1st in front of the Glasgow crowd. This is just exciting. It's interesting because Fisher is been on the rise recently. They've both got very similar records. Fisher is so well-rounded, such a dangerous opponent for Norman Parke to have as his first fight out of the UFC. And that's the other question. How will Norman Parke respond to his first fight outside that promotion, stepping into the ACB cage? It's always a question asked of any fighter when they come off a show like the UFC. But for this one, I'm really struggling to call this because both fighters, such similar records. Fisher has been on a tear, and Parke is looking to re-establish himself. So for me, really interesting. This is one of those things where it's like a Rubik's Cube of MMA. Which way will it go? How will they figure it out? And who can impose their game on the night? Amazing.
And looking at one of the other headliners of course, Saul the Hangman Rogers, hottest free agent of the last year, and I believe he's signed a multi-fight deal with ACB. Is that correct, sir?
Absolutely correct, and that's another exciting thing about this ACB promotion. They've only been going for about 3 and a bit years, and in that time they're already up to ACB 47 next weekend. So if you work out, they're almost turning out an event a month. And the way they do it is they have one Young Eagles event, which is their feeder league, which is a fantastic way of doing it. And there's a few of these Young Eagles on this card coming over to Scotland. And then they give them experience. They give them a sort of taste of the big show, and then they grow them into the bigger events, which are the main card events that you see going up on YouTube and going out across all the MMA websites. So for Saul to be signed to a multi-fight deal really shows their ambition, really shows what they can offer fighters as well. That 145 pound, that 155 pound division that they have are both just full of rows of killers. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Saul weighs up against some of the best talent out there in Russia and beyond.
And so for guys, including myself, who are not really familiar with this feeder league you talk about, Young Eagles, I believe, is that what ACB are calling it? How does that all work? What's the setup? What's the structure there?
It's unbelievable, mate. This is the thing. Like when I've peeled back this curtain of opening my eyes to what they do over there for Russian MMA and the countries around it, Dagestan, Kazakhstan. Well, first of all, I spoke to you a little bit off air about this. One thing they've got is just a culture of combat sports. When we go and kick a football around on Sundays when we're 5, 6, 7 years old, they put their young men into combat sambo, submission wrestling, grappling tournaments. So they are just from a very young age, they're exposed, almost like the wrestling culture in America, to that sort of competitive combat sport thing. And from that, then they nurture their young fighters that show potential. So the feeder league, this Young Eagles, is just a fantastic way of doing it. It's almost like the first division, if you think of it in football analogy terms. So what they will do is they'll spot a number of young stars in a number of young gyms, and from those they will then build these smaller cards, which basically give them the experience of a big show, but fighting young talent that is also going up. So